As the story opens, we see Fontaine, a drug dealer in Glen City. One day, during a fight with another dealer, Fontaine breaks his leg with his car. Later that day, when Fontaine returned home, he discovered his younger brother had passed away. Fontaine's mother, who never leaves her bed, also resides in this home. When Fontaine's friend informs him that Slick Charles has not delivered all the money, Fontaine rushes over to recover it and states that the business is accomplishing well this time. He is currently short on cash. Slick hands the money to Fontaine, who then says, "Look, uncle, I will take the money, otherwise get ready to die." Fontaine then leaves the area and later approaches the man with whom he had argued with his group and fraudulently defrauds him. It is completely unforeseen that Fontaine flees from this particular spot while being shot. Fontaine has no way of remembering anything that occurred to him when he fell asleep on his bed the following morning. He goes to Slick to receive the money again after getting caught up with his daily tasks, but when Slick sees Fontaine alive, his parrots abandon their homes. He believes that this is Fontaine's spirit, who has come to rob him of his money. He queries Fontaine, saying, "The people of Isaac shot you right in front of my eyes. How are you alive?" Fontaine responds, "What nonsense are you talking? I do not remember anything like that." And then they both run into Yo-Yo, who witnessed Isaac's supporters firing shots at Fontaine. Yo-Yo claims to know the owners of those cars, at which point the three of them visit the man's home, where Fontaine spots the same black automobile that was used to kidnap and remove a man from his home earlier that day. The house was empty when they arrived, but the coffee on the table was still steaming. Fontaine then looks in all the corners and crevices of the house before discovering an elevator that is headed for the basement. Now, these three are seated in the lift and arrive in the basement, where a lab was constructed beneath. The lab scientist is being pointed at by Fontaine, who is holding a gun. When Slick discovers white powder in the lab, thinking it to be cocaine, I taste it and put the remaining powder in the packet, but this powder is some kind of chemical that makes Slick laugh when he eats it, which is when Yo-Yo's flask breaks. I tell him that I am an ordinary worker but that we are dispersed all over the place. Slick fires the round, killing the scientist in the process. The moment Fontaine's gaze turns to a dead body nearby and he approaches C, everyone loses breath since the victim was a man who resembles Fontaine and whose body was covered in bullet wounds. Once you have seen this, Fontaine loses his hearing, and the individuals in question now emerge from the lab, claiming that they may have heard about us. By this point, it would be safer for us to remain hidden, but Fontaine was determined to discover the truth at all costs. He and a few of his buddies enter the same house the following morning, but by night, the elevator and lab have vanished. After seeing this, Fontaine loses his mind and tells his pals the entire tale at the restaurant. However, the diners all break out in raucous laughter. When Slick reveals that the white substance he obtained in the lab caused him to chuckle even after eating it, it appears as though everyone had inhaled laughing gas at that point. Perhaps to discover this, these people mix the same powder with the chicken. Yo-Yo walks to the restaurant manager who resembles the scientist in the lab identically, and it is then that she realizes there are CCTV cameras throughout the city and that everyone is being watched, something that none of them were previously aware of. Yo-Yo suggests to her companions that it is possible that these individuals are testing us and that they have infused the white material into very good. She then notices another drug dealer's van, which had arrived to give some packets to a store. Slick rushes to their van to look and discovers some sort of key card there, but she then learns that these individuals took a box and entered the church. As soon as Fontaine places the key there, a lift emerges out of nowhere, and once more these individuals board it to enter the underground lab, which is completely different from the last lab. Now these people pursue them and discover the location where the key card is placed. A large number of scientists were employed here, and 3 of them were abducted. These people enter the lab while wearing the suits they stole. When they arrive, they learn that there is a lab facility beneath the city where these scientists enlist the aid of the citizens of the city and abduct them to do various types of experiments on them. These people discover that Fontaine and Slick's clones are also present in the lab when they begin opening the boxes there. This causes Fontaine to go bonkers once more and threaten to shoot a clone, but Yo-Yo stops him. These scientists have even created clones of many people in the city that are controlled by white scientists. Additionally, he informs them that these individuals have cloned a few notable citizens of the city. Since these individuals are not like other citizens, we must make extensive preparations to expose them. These people now ascend with the aid of a lift that opens in a nearby club, but the people from the lab facility learn about them and instruct the DJ present in the club to stop them. As soon as the DJ starts playing a particular song, Fontaine and Slick, who were already in the club, start to become hypnotized. Yo-Yo, however, is unaffected by this, so the DJ removes the 2 from the establishment, at which point the rest of the club's hypnotized patrons chase after the 3. When a car pulls up in front of them and stops, an American scientist by the name of Chester Nixon, who was present at the time together with Fontaine's other clone, comes out. He informs the group that other scientists, like myself, are conducting research on the black population in areas with a low socioeconomic status. We can create human clones and live in peace in America without anyone noticing our covert enterprise. However, Fontaine hands him a gun, and before he can fire, Nixon uses some hypnotic words to hypnotize the entire crowd. At this point, Nixon has complete control over the people, and they will do as he commands. However, those words have no effect on Yo-Yo, which is why Nixon ordered Fontaine. He threatens Yo-Yo with a gun and threatens to kill everyone if the investigation does not cease. After stating this, he moves on. Then everyone returns to their own houses and things get back to normal. Now, the following morning, when Fontaine wakes up, he is very depressed and upset, which is why he goes to his mother's room. But as soon as he breaks the door and goes inside, he sees that there is a tape recorder on the table from which he used to hear voices. At this point, Fontaine realizes that everything in this place is fake, and he breaks everything in anger. Yo-Yo, on the other hand, writes the American government a letter. However, Yo-Yo is abducted by Nixon before the letter is delivered, and he begins the process of creating his clone. Following their discovery of Yo-Yo, Fontaine and Slick devise an escape plan to save him. Following that, Fontaine meets the drug dealer Isaac to ask for help and tells him that some scientists are creating a clone of him and that they have kidnapped Yo-Yo as well. Fontaine requires Isaac's help to save the city, but Isaac shoots him and throws him in the middle of the road. At that point, some Nixon supporters start arriving and put Fontaine in a car, taking him to the lab, where the scientists create a more powerful clone of him. They transfer all of his memories to this new clone, and when he awakens in the morning, he is back at home and going about his regular business as usual. However, Fontaine, who was shot in the lab, is still alive but continues to act like he is dead until his friend Slick kidnaps him and makes him a prisoner. Since there are cameras throughout every part of the city, Slick knew it would be difficult to get into the lab, so Isaac shot Fontaine on the shoulder to lead him there. Slick and Isaac then join a large group of people inside the lab after Fontaine brings a scientist to the control room and unlocks every lift door in the rest of the town. The entire lab is in chaos as a result of his coming after breaking everything there. Yo-Yo and the other individuals who were held here as test subjects are released by these folks. Fontaine then had a very advanced confrontation with his clone Chester, who smashed Fontaine until he was unconscious and was dragged away from the scene. Yo-Yo is about to be killed when Slick appears from behind and pops open Fontaine's head, allowing Fontaine to recognize that there are several clones spending time in front of him. Nixon then gets there and claims that you will not be able to stop us because we are dispersed throughout several major towns such as Los Angeles and Chicago. He is seated in front of an elderly man who resembles Fontaine. He claims that I am the genuine Fontaine and that each of you is a clone of me. Why are you doing this? Fontaine queries. He claims that my younger brother was slain by an American policeman, simply because he was black and he stood out from the crowd. To abolish this racist country is the reason for this. I began creating clones, and by altering the genes of black people, I turned them white like Americans. As a result, our new generation, which will be born white, will be able to put an end to the riots caused by racial prejudice in America and restore peace to the entire nation. The fact that the restaurant manager and the scientists in the lab looked alike was that they had been cloned from black to white. The senior scientist claims that the entire nation will soon begin working on this project. Chester is asked by an elderly scientist to kill his clone, but Fontaine hypnotizes Chester by uttering the words Olympic Black. Fontaine claims that you are not allowed to do this and that you have no authority to interfere with the rules of nature. These were the identical words that Nixon used to hypnotize all the clones, which is why Chester was also hypnotized and shot the elderly scientist in Fontaine's direction, killing him. Now that everyone who had been kept in the lab for the experiment was free, when these people emerged from the church, the entire city gathered to assist them by providing food and clothing. The dark truth of the covert operation becomes apparent to the entire nation when this news is broadcast in the media. Following the public's elevation of Fontaine, Slick, and Yo-Yo to hero status, Tyrone, a Fontaine clone who was shocked to see his look-alike on news television, is shown in Los Angeles. Tyrone is left with many unanswered questions as the film concludes in suspense.